Hi there and welcome to tutorial 59. Today we're going to be looking at classic synth sounds from two classic Roland synths, the SH2 and the Roland D50, and I'm going to show you how I've emulated the brute factor that's available on the Arturia synths. But first the SH2, and I had an SH2 back in the 70s. And it's a classic Roland mono synth 2 oscillator, but what it did have was a sub oscillator. Now if I just show you the sound that I've set up, this is one of my favourite sounds from the SH2. And I'll show you how I got that sound. So we're going to go over to an initial setting. And first of all, we're going to be sorting out 2 oscillators and then adding the third oscillator in a little while. So we've got a 16-foot pitch on both of these oscillators, and I'll click them both in at full volume. And we need a pulse wave, and the pulse width is 51, so just slightly off the central mark. Pulse width 51 here. There we go. And we need a little bit of detuning in this oscillator, minus 19. Now that's a nice sound in itself, but we're also going to be using a bit of pulse width modulation from LFO1. So sine wave, pulse width modulation, there we are. And the speed of this is 18. And the depth is 52. So that's the basic sound, and then we're going to go over to the filter, and the cutoff here is 25. Now that's virtually killed the sound, but we're going to bring up the filter envelope amount to 37. There we are. And it's a short percussive sound because of this decay knob here. So attack 0, decay is 74. There we are. The sustain is 0, the release is 0. We're also going to be looking at a resonance, 38, to get that down sort of sound. And key track is 61. Now that would be an okay sound in itself. But we're going to be yeah, sorry, I haven't done the amplifier envelope. So that's on the default setting: attack 0, sustain 127, release 0, velocity 0. Okay, so that would be a nice sound in itself. We need to put the mono switch in. And then we're going to introduce the third oscillator at a 32-foot pitch. And that's on a square wave. And this on the SH2 synth, although it was a 2 oscillator synth, on many Roland synths in the 70s, they introduced the idea of a sub oscillator, which gave you 1 octave below the main oscillators. And sometimes you could even get 2 octaves lower. But on this particular case, these are at 16-foot pitch, and this is 32-foot pitch, and that's an octave lower. Now, if we just hear that sound on its own, sounds quite hollow and thin, and this sound on its own, you know, sounds okay, but mixing the two together, gives that classic sound. So that's the first bass sound that we're going to be looking at. And later on in the video, I'll be putting a few of these sounds together in the form of a track. Okay, the next one that we're going to look at is 857 on here, and it's the 1987 synth of Roland's called the D50, and here we go. And some of the characteristics of the D50, it was a sort of a digital synth, but it was the first synth that had effects built in. So a chorus and reverb were built into the sound. And Roland decided to use short samples of particular sounds and then mix them in with digital oscillators. And some of the great programmers there were responsible for some of the 64 preset sounds that were available on the synth, and the D50, the Fantasia sound is one of the classic sounds. And it used 4 elements of sounds all combined together. Now, if I take out oscillator 1 that's on the wavetable, you can hear it's just a big fat pad sound. But the oscillator 1 is that sort of bell-like sound. So I'll show you how I got that sound. So go over to the initial setting, and we're going to leave oscillator 1 out for the moment. So take that out. We'll click in oscillators 2 and 3, and we're on a 16-foot pulse waveform, and the pulse width is 50, that's the default setting, with a detune of -6. And on oscillator 2, we need a 16-foot waveform, and pulse width this time is 45. There we go. And the detune is +10. Okay, there's also some pulse width modulation, again from LFO1. So LFO1, sine wave. In fact, I think we're going to use a triangle wave for this one. The speed is 27. And the depth is 52. So we need to apply that to the pulse width. And that gives us our sort of fat pad sound. I'll set up the other values now and then go back to oscillator 1 and show you what I did with that. So we've got a low pass filter, 24 dB per octave, cutoff 0, resonance 0, key track 91. So that's cut off all of the sound basically, but the filter envelope amount is +43. Crucial bit here is the decay 85, sustain 88. That's letting a lot more of the sound through. And the release 96. Now the release of 96 means that when I set up the amplifier envelope, you'll be able to hear that release a bit better. So velocity is going to be in this one. Velocity 77. And what the velocity control does is the harder I hit the keys, the more the filter opens, as well as the amplifier gets louder. So in the amplifier envelope, we need attack time 0, sustain 127, release 88. So that's our big fat pad sound with the inclusion of chorus, and the rate is 14 and the depth is 47. So as I say, Roland was one of the first synths to incorporate chorus and reverb. We'll set up the reverb. Time is 60. level 45. So that would be a nice pad sound in itself, but we're going to introduce the wavetable in Oscillator 1. So I'll click in Oscillator 1. It's on a 4-foot pitch, which is quite high up. And in the wavetable setting, we've got wavetable, where is it? 005, there we are. And what they call as the pulse width is 009. And we've actually got, if I just take the other oscillators out, we've got a bell-like sound. Now, I'm also going to twiddle with the semitone here and increase it by +5. And that's up a fourth from the normal pitch. But when I click these two in, that gives us our completed D50 emulation on the Fantasia setting. Okay, and you'll hear that in the track at the end. And now the final thing I'm going to show you is how I've emulated the brute factor from the Arturia series of synths. Let's find that sound. Oh, I've called it Saws Dirty for some reason. Now that's got the reason that Arturia did this brute factor was in early synths like the Mini Moog and the Harp Odyssey. You could take a headphone output out the back and plug it into an input, and then feed that input through the filter to produce a distortion. It did two things really. It produced a distorted sound, and it also gave you some subharmonics, which gave a real depth to the sound. It was a little bit unpredictable, the results that you got, and even on the the mini brutes and things like that, if you turn the brute factor up too much, it goes a little bit wild. But on here, I can show you how I've emulated that without too much wildness. Okay, so we go to the initial setting. Oh, let's use this one. They're all pretty much the same, one oscillator. And I've got oscillator 1 on a 16-foot pitch, oscillator 2 on a 16-foot pitch, and these are both on saw waveforms. Now what I'm going to do is create a nice sort of gentle sound to begin with, and then I'm going to show you how I've dirtied that up. We need some vibrato set up on the wheel. So this is going to affect oscillators 1 and 2. And the speed is 50. So this is a normal vibrato setting, depth 21. Okay, that's good. I'm not using any detune on there or anything, but I'll just set up the filter now. So it's a low pass filter, 24 dB per octave, cut off 82. So fairly gentle sound really. Key track 64, that's bang in the middle. What else have we got? We need some filter envelope amount. Oh, do we? No, we don't. Not on this one. No, I'm looking at the wrong setting. The velocity is going to be 0. The amount of the filter envelope is 0, so the filter envelope's not affected. And it's a default setting on the amplifier envelope, so 0, 1, 2, 7, and 0. Very sort of plain sound in a way. We're going to add a bit of delay to that to liven it up a bit. So delay time 100. There we go, and the level is 38. There we are. We also need mono in, And we need a bit of glide in there as well, so glide's 42. Glide rate 42. Now, how I've dirtied that up is I'm going to alter three things. I'm first of all going to alter the resonance to 63. So added brightness there. Oh yes, and what I need to do is set up this third oscillator. Now remember me saying that the brute factor introduced a subharmonic. That's exactly what I'm going to do with oscillator 3. So I'll click it in, but turn the level to 0. And we need a 64 foot pitch, the lowest pitch, on a sine wave with 0 frequency modulation. So when I turn, let's just hear that sine wave. Oh yes, it's a bit too low to actually hear it. So there's our sine wave there. And what that's going to do is it's going to interfere with other bits of the synth. I'll show you that in a second. So we've got oscillator 3 set up, but 0 level. And now I'm going to turn the drive up. Yeah. And then I'm going to turn the volume of this up. Can you hear how that introduces some real rasp to the sound? And I'm going to put it on a level of 34 at the moment. And that's pretty much our sledge factor sound. If you turn the oscillator 3 up higher, it alters the apparent pitch of the whole thing. So this is at the moment at 16 foot pitch, but when I put this in, it's a lower pitch. Okay, and so if I turn this down again, it appears that the higher pitch is going to come in. A little bit like feedback. Okay, so that's the sledge factor, and I'll mix that in with the track. Right, what I forgot to mention here was that on oscillator 2 we've got a detune of -4, and that also adds the extra raspiness that we need to the sound. Okay, so you'll hear that in the track.